Well, good morning, everybody. This is Richard Chaplin from the Managing Partners Forum, and I'm absolutely delighted to welcome you all to episode 3 of Retuning Your Firm. For those of you who haven't been on this call before, retuning is an interesting analogy because in one sense, it's about the car in a pit stop. Another sense, it's about the driver or perhaps the leader of the firm. And then, of course, without the pit crew and out the people who are telling you what the track condition is like and what your other cars are doing, you will fall behind in the race or worse. Now, I could pursue the analogy too far, but I think it's an interesting way to think about what we as leaders of professional firms are all facing at the moment. In what I think said last week was we're now in the new normal, but it's not very evenly distributed. In other words, everybody is still slightly trying to find out what it feels like, but we all kind of know we're in it, despite what we might be told by government or anybody else. So let's just quickly run through some of the key issues, because they really do seem to come up every time, around 7 strategies for reaching your firm. So think big. Think about things that you can do that are, as Lewis Carroll said, believe 6 impossible things before breakfast. Think about the power of relationships, and Itzik, I know, is talking today, will be very much focusing on relationships and reciprocity and the importance of remembering favors from the past, and he's brilliant at that. Think small, focus on some of the angles that resonate with your key audiences. In other words, being a conglomerate is fine at one level, but what is it that really people relate to, particularly when your channels may be limited because of no face-to-face or limited face-to-face. Think about campaigns rather than one-offs. Think about how that helps turn the people you're dealing with into an audience, into a community. And I think that's very much where Simon's coming in today. We're talking about around the sort of the community aspect, and helping the firm work together as a community is really powerful. Be willing to try new things. At the moment, you're lucky, all the naysayers are in their caves still. It's beginning to emerge now, but the managing partner has said to me, oh great, I can really get on with the things I've always wanted to do, and there's nobody getting in the way. That won't last forever, so make sure you take advantage of it. Speed is of the essence, picking up the same point. So, but be very clear that what you're actually doing is assumptions. So articulate them, market test them, and if they prove invalid, and they will, some of them, that's inevitable, then just amend and pivot. And that depersonalizes a lot of what the whole thing's about. And finally, be entrepreneurial. There's 3 founders on the call today, so that in itself is interesting on the panel. So looking at the job titles, that was quite amusing. So keep listening and keep innovating. And innovating, again, just picking that one up. Today we are fortunate that Itzik's joining us, and Itzik is the vice chair of the Marketing and BD Committee of the International Bar Association. I think I got that right. And he's interested in having a show within a show of a project that he's working on to bring together a huge numbers of people around the world focused on marketing and BD. Now, you can't say, what are we doing here with marketing and BD? The reality is that marketing always is going to be a key discipline within management, and you can't be a managing partner if you're not fundamentally leading the marketing of your organization. It just isn't going to work for you. So we'll come back to all that a little bit later, but just to say thank Elena Kudska of Globsec, which is a Bratislava think tank, at an event which I attended a few months ago. I've tweaked it a bit, but I think those are really quite interesting elements that we just do seem to come up with time and time again. So coming on to today, who's involved? Simon Barrow, anyone who's ever heard the term employer brand, we literally owe it to Simon. Simon invented it. Simon wrote the book about it. Simon had the research done on it, and he now speaks to, I think last week, 28,000 people in a conference, and he's come along to so we can hear him today. So thank you, Simon. Next up will be Jeremy, who some of you will know. He's obviously, I think, 8th appearance, possibly 9 now across the series. Managing partner of Hayes McIntyre, which is a mid-sized accountancy firm, 1 office in London, and obviously going through all the re-engagement and how does that whole thing work against a political dimension, which is, let's say, a little bit muddled at the moment. That's probably an elegant way of putting it. Thirdly, we have Itzik. Itzik, as I mentioned, he is in fact, he's a lawyer. Have a look at his website and you will never find a lawyer who's presented himself in that way. He is the founder and organizer of an organization called The Switch, which, being a good lawyer, he has registered as a patent. And he's actually spends his life traveling 68 countries in the year, giving speeches on networking. He's written books about it, and delighted that you can join us from your home in Netherlands today, because the great thing about this particular sessions that we run is that we can bring people in from different countries. And talking about different countries, Francesca this year or this week rather, is in Scotland on holiday. And I said to her, "What are you doing? You're on holiday." And she said, "No, I couldn't miss it." So thank you for joining us on holiday, Francesca, and enjoy St Andrews when you're not walking along the beautiful beach, and even if you don't have time to play golf this time around. And of course, yours truly, founder chief exec of the Managing Partners Forum. So that's today's panel. Before we go into the poll, I just want to quickly run through some of the findings from last week's poll, because I think people find that really quite helpful. If you recall, what we were looking at was procurement, managing suppliers, if you like. And this is one of the questions which kind of scared me a bit, which was to say, do you have an established approach to managing your key suppliers? It wasn't even any suppliers, key suppliers. And as you can see in green, 21% said, no management, we really don't do it in a structured way at all. The big chunk were occasional, and only 18% said they do it on a regular basis. Now, I don't know if you've ever thought about supply chain management, but I wouldn't have thought that that's a particularly good set of stats, quite frankly. And running with it, if you like, around panels, because again, if you don't bring your suppliers into panels, how are you going to manage them? And 55% no panels and no plans to do so, and only 13% when they got the panel, and more than half the spend goes to panel members. So again, not very sophisticated in that space, I think is an elegant way of putting it. Is there a policy? Well, about a quarter of you, perhaps a bit more, saying no policy yet. Well, we were thinking about writing it. General policy, 45%, only a third have got something that's specific to particular areas of spend, which again, any procurement person will tell you isn't the best place to be. 1/3 of people aren't using either publishing needs, e-auctions, tenders, supplier negotiation. What are they doing? Not buying anything? I don't think so. Every firm, by definition, is both a client and a supplier, can't not be. What percentage of purchases do you collect structured feedback? None, 32%, and only a very, very small percentage, more than half their suppliers in terms of the numbers of purchases as opposed to the value of spend, are slightly different. So who's responsible? Okay, well, firm-wide leader, 34, C-suite director, 29. The 3% says no one's responsible for it. Well, that's very low. So what's holding it back? And this is possibly the most interesting slide. The lack of expertise comes top. Changing business priorities, 24%, none of them apply to us. Okay, let's take that as a given. Partner resistance and others you can read on down. So there's clearly quite a lot of work that's needed at many professional firms around the procurement agenda, and every managing partner I talk to pretty much says, oh no, I don't get that involved in managing suppliers. Maybe actually there's some money that could be saved here big time, because as we all know, 20% margin, £1 saved on your overheads, the same as £5 of new work. And guess what? It doesn't take any time or resource or effort. You just watch it float into your bank. That's the good news, or partners' pockets, whichever way you think about it. So feedback from UK government. Again, I think I use the same one because it's really great, but obviously these poll results are incredibly valuable to government. So we're about to do the poll now, and I really do, please therefore, encourage you to do it. Today's poll, what we're looking at is employee brand management system, which sounds a bit designed by a consultant. It's partly me, I think, as well. But the point, I think, really here is that the employee brand, which as Simon will explain afterwards, is very much about your employment experience, get that right. It has to be managed, and the only way you can manage something in life is through a system. So I've crashed the four together into an employee brand management system. So apologize if it's a bit convoluted, but hopefully you'll get the point, and Simon will be explaining in a bit more detail. So in terms of the first question, what are the most important elements in the employment experience? Colleagues and culture are the things that people feel are the most important, followed quite closely by pride in the firm and what the work it does. So that's the answer to the first question. Moving down to the second question, corporate measures which attract on a regular basis to accessibility as an employer. And let's just see, are there any nones on that one? That's always quite interesting. Yeah, nearly 20% don't track any of them, Simon, so you might have views on that. And the one that obviously is the most, the highest is voluntary exits, which attract, and sickness and absentee, 9% alumni, none of the others really getting above 50%. So obviously more tracking could take place. I think that's what I'd take away from that one. How do you know how people feel about working for your firm? And again, exit interviews, 80%, clearly the most popular. Again, None of them track none of them. So at least everybody's doing something to find out about how people feel working for the firm. So that's a relief. In terms of any others that go above 50%, yeah, the only one is direct personal feedback from single employees. So those are the two kind of key metrics that people are using in order to actually find out how people feel working for the firm. In your firm, which of these areas normally carry the most weight during partner-directed discussions on current issues? Finance and cash flow, and that possibly, given the current climate, isn't wholly surprising, but it's a fairly even spread. This was a single select question, so they had no choice. It's probably about the first time ever clients hadn't actually come top of the list, so that's unusual in itself. A little bit about operational performance and risk. The others really don't figure at all. Marketing, sorry about this, Itzik, a mere 7%. So it isn't top of people's mind when at partner meetings, which is realistically where the tone is set for a lot of things that will happen elsewhere in any firm. Moving on, satisfaction. How satisfied are you that people and employment issues receive the necessary understanding, leadership, measurement, urgency, and coherence? We're quite satisfied, 63%. Does that stack up with the answers that we've just seen a few minutes ago? Not sure. Jury might be out on that one. But again, Simon, I'm sure will have views. Do you believe that your career site messages are distinctive and compelling versus your competitors? Again, mostly clear. Not at all clear. One honest person at 2%, but again, one can have a view as to independently whether that's the case or not. Is there a policy? Yes, there is a policy for 35%, but that's quite a low percentage, I think you would probably say. And again, no policy and no plan to write one, 23%. So without a policy, without a system, are you really managing your employer brand? Again, Simon will have views on that. In your opinion, who should have primary responsibility for an employer brand management system? Quite clearly, the managing partner comes through there quite strongly, and everybody recognizes that somebody should have primary responsibility, which is relief, I guess. Again, the barrier questions are always interesting. What's actually getting in the way? Well, the one that seemed to be most getting in the way is changing business priorities, which I find that a bit strange, to be honest, because I thought that people is probably the one constant you have in your firm, but never mind. And anyway, you then have other ones, and again, they're listed all here, but the ones that lack of recognition of the value of the employer brand, lack of budget, they're in the 20s, but none of them are getting very high marks in terms of barriers. And 16% of firms say bravely, none of them apply to us. And again, we can take a view as to whether that may or may not be the case. And finally, in terms of the current climate, COVID, etc., are leaders actually walking the talk? Is our behaviors the reality? Are they sharing the pain? Well, the transparency is coming through 63%. Employees being valued at least as highly as other stakeholders is still less than half. And 5% of you say, no, we haven't actually really done any of them. So there you go. Anyway, I think that's probably enough for me. I will stop sharing now, and I will close down the box, and I will stop sharing this, and I will invite Simon to unmute and come and share his thoughts on what we've just been observed through the poll.
It's a privilege to talk to professional services leaders. You employ some of the best people in the country. Most of you will be exporters as well. I'm delighted to say a few words about employer brand management. I'm going to cover just 3 points. One, the origins of it. Secondly, my current views on where it's going in the present circumstances, and a word about HR and its power. My aim has for years been to bring the best of product brand management to people at work. As Richard said, I was a brand manager first with Knorr, now owned by Unilever, and then Colgate. My thinking is based on the principles of good product brand management: coherence, coordination, measurement, all the stuff you've seen in the panel we've just gone through. That was identified, not by me, but 90 years ago by a 26-year-old Harvard a graduate working in the advertising department of Procter & Gamble. And brand management, hence marketing, has come from that man and is still in pretty good shape. He went on to become chief executive of Procter & Gamble at the age of 44. And he's not alone in terms of marketing people who have gone into bigger general management jobs. And you can see where I'm going on that. The critical elements of employer brand management in his time and now, the creation of a plan which is approved by an engaged and intensely interested management. There's a point there for us in the people world. Establishing the truth about what makes your brand distinctive and compelling, and addressing whatever is holding you back, wherever it is and at whatever level it is. And the key to success in a brand management, whether product or employment, is proximity to power. It doesn't mean you have power. It means you are close to people who do have, and they trust and respect you. The branding aspects, e.g. advertising and promotion, are only part of what makes for success. Employer branding is not the answer to any of the issues. You cannot spin your way out of to an employer brand. People know it already. The origin of the term, well, some years after Colgate, I was chief executive of an HR-facing business. It was profitable, but it was reactive and it was project-driven. And I thought to myself, where are the disciplines of brand management in the client community? And that thinking prompted me to say, don't kid yourself. This is it's a different ballpark. It's an employer brand. And I'm indebted to Tim Ambler, then Senior Research Fellow of London Business School, for helping to do the first MBA research. And we wrote a paper together, and it's the most popular paper Tim gets asked for all these years later. One definition, which I have slightly adjusted over the years. Right now, it's the employer brand is formed by the functional, economic, and psychological realities making up the employment experience, the employee experience provided by the employer. Employer brand management must be able to influence every element of the employee experience. That's the heart of the employer brand. It's not branding. It's what you actually do to make yourself an outstanding employer. Now, a few thoughts, starting with 2020. In uncertain and troubled times, the conduct of the leadership will never be forgotten. How shared was the pain if you've had to inflict it? How transparent and accessible was the leadership? Do you share the opinions, the options for the business? How are people valued in the list of stakeholders? Now, some thoughts for the future. It's great to see so many in the community, certainly in my local area, the number of people who are reaching out to other people who are less fortunate. I wonder whether businesses will pick up on this. It would be thrilling if they did. I would love to see kindness in a list of values. We all need it. And management actions, however brutal they can be, and they sometimes need to be brutal, you don't have to put the decency and kindness away from them. And in questions, I've got a story to tell on that, which I'm proud of. The next, the support for chief executives, senior partners, etc., who take a longer term view. It's interesting that in the Edelman Trust Barometer, published in January of this year, that 73% of respondents in considering a firm look at the performance of the chief executive in terms of what they have said about society at large. They are not disconnected from the interests of the firm. They are part of the firm. And I believe the post-virus world is going to change employer brand thinking better and faster. I heard a senior doctor many of you will have seen him too, I suspect, saying recently, we've needed this change for years, and now in a few weeks we've got it. We're going to see a lot of that. Many of you will have already seen that feeling of pull down the ramparts that are stopping us doing the right thing. We're going to see the more urgency, more impatience to address long-standing challenges that management may have tolerated in the past, but won't do anymore. Number one for me is to make the principles of employer brand management at least as demanding as the principles of product brand management. In a new world of truth and directness, it's the realities of the employment experience which count. For years, too many have tiptoed around the sensitivities and failed to tell the truth to power. In questions, I can cover some of the mistakes I have made in the marketing world and been forgiven for, things that I would never have been able to do within the world of HR.
Thanks very much. That's really great, Simon. I mean, what I'll do now, if I may, is I'll pass on to Jeremy. Jeremy, tell me about is the word employer brand one that your firm would relate to, or do you look at it from a slightly different perspective?
Interesting, Richard. Thank you. And good morning, everyone. I hope that everyone is keeping well. When I made my notes for this morning, I was I suppose quite pleased with what we have done in recent months with regard to our employees. I then saw the survey this morning and thought, oh no, we haven't done that, we haven't done that, we haven't done that, and so I was less pleased. But then I've sort of come back a little bit, having listened to Simon. So I think our employees I have been front and center for us during this period, and in terms of engagement, we have sought to do as much as possible, and I think we have done a lot and have done reasonably well. Of course, that's not for me to judge, that's for my colleagues to judge, but certainly we have created lots of opportunities. We have a staff briefing every week, every Thursday afternoon. Initially, I led that every week as we went through the early stages of the pandemic and the explaining the impact to everyone on the business and what we were doing to address it, etc. And then latterly, we have changed that up with different people presenting on different aspects of the business, which are really more general presentations as opposed to being specific to the pandemic. We've also, of course, run surveys, and we've tried to create as much contact as possible, and we've had a cascade effect with that. So certainly, as the group of partners, we've been particularly keen to ensure we are engaged with our next tier down, our managers, and then we've encouraged them to sort of engage with the next tier below them, just because it was unrealistic to have good dialogue with so many people at so many different levels. We've had lots of virtual contact, as you'd imagine, but we've also started face-to-face contact. So a couple of weeks ago, we had a partners managers get together in Hyde Park in groups of 6, following the social distancing guidelines. Just to sort of get some face-to-face contact, because there is no doubt that as much as we've done and tried to do, you don't have that opportunity when you do in the office to go and talk to people, just wander past their desk and talk to them. Similarly, they don't have the opportunity to do that with us. And some of the feedback we've had in that regard has been, they're worried about phoning a partner. Partners are busy, and if it's just something small or minor, it seems small or minor to them, it's not easy to pick up the phone and have that conversation or have a Skype call or whatever. And so there is no doubt that you lose that when we're not physically in the same location, and that's something we're working on and conscious of. I've also encouraged our partners to pick up the phone to people and make contact with people. One of my former colleagues used to talk about partner time with staff being the gold dust, and you need to sprinkle it every so often. As partners and as leaders of our business, we sometimes underestimate the value that we bring to people we work with in terms of communicating with them and allowing them to talk to us and to have interest in the business, etc. So there's been a lot of effort in that regard. Just in terms of retuning the business, I think I wouldn't say as much it's been retuning, but certainly it has caused us to look at some of our core principles. I've talked about the staff, and that's very much front and center. And then obviously clients, looking at how we're dealing with clients, making sure that we're working with them closely, in contact with them closely, and again, helping them as much as possible. And there's certainly been the view has been to, let's help them, let's get jobs over the line. We are struggling, it's fair to say, with efficiencies in the business because the clients are taking a lot of time. Audit work in particular is taking a lot of time, and that time is, in the current climate, is not always that easy to recover. But we've made it clear that we must not compromise on the quality of the work we're doing or on the time we're spending with clients. So that's been particularly important as well. Finally, we are getting on to our strategy, and later today we do have one of our strategy group meetings. We'd started looking at our 3-year plan from 21 to 24 before the pandemic. That's all been put on hold, but today is the first meeting post-pandemic, well, not post-pandemic, but since we've been working remotely, that we're having to just revisit our strategy. I think a lot of the points that we set out in our original meeting still hold good, but of course there are new challenges and new opportunities, and certainly we will be discussing, I'm sure, location and space and access to people, and that's suddenly opened up significantly, and access to clients both nationally and internationally has certainly opened up. So I'm sure they will feature as part of our strategy. So I think, Richard, those were the key things that I was going to mention this week.
Well, thanks very much, Jeremy. And as always, I love the way you say, well, I thought we got it there, but actually having seen the poll, maybe there's some things we could be doing, and that's great, because I'm sure there are others on the call. And actually what we're going to be doing, I think I mentioned in my note, is taking that poll and turning it into a diagnostic, a bit like we did with the procurement one, so that people will be actually able to complete it. I'll transfer all today's scores into that diagnostic so we can see what the average is, and then hopefully people can then actually possibly get different people in the firm to complete it, and then see if you all agree come to the same place, because I suspect there'll be some quite interesting gaps that emerge in terms of internal perceptions that then the management team can then address. So what we're trying to do as a forum is to give you those tools to actually help you as a leader think about whether you are indeed doing the best you possibly can for your people. Itzik, join us now. Thank you very much for coming. It's great to say hello because you're in Holland, and great for this particular environment that we don't have to therefore worry too much about frontiers. So that's one of the positives about going online. But I think there's a number of other elements where I think the word Zoom fatigue is probably one that has certainly entered the lexicon. And it'd be interesting to hear how you, as a lawyer, obviously a very successful M&A lawyer, international tax, etc., have now almost reinvented yourself as a sort of international globetrotting speaker. Well, not this year maybe, but hopefully next. But also, more importantly, how, particularly with the IBA conference that you're organising, and do talk about that, looking at ways to engage with people online, which make it not just draining, but maybe even fun. Itzik, over to you, sir. About 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Richard. Thanks to everybody, and I'm listening carefully, and I just want to give one comment. I think that's something that tailor-made and also reflect what I'm going to say now. But actually, it's a very good period that I was looking for a long time in my life. A period when we're examining word like authenticity, we're examining a really real relationship. And Simon mentioned what kindness, we need that. All those things that we always used to call soft skills, now in the center of the stage. And just to remind the leaders amongst us that clients are looking at you. client look at you, if you're becoming so sincere now, calling them every day, they're asking themselves, what did I do before? Why didn't they call me before? And when this period will stop and you not continue consistently doing what you're doing now, they'll ask, they don't really care because they call me when they needed me. Now, when everything back to normal, they don't really care. And actually, one of the biggest things I investigated years ago, and I'm doing actually online event from 2005. So this period didn't change your way of behaving, just put it, as I said, in the center of the stage. And I tell you what, because I love relationship, I love people. As a lawyer and accountant, that's all what I cared. I know that's what brought me where I am. But how will I select the people I want to talk? How will I make sure, although I live not far away from Amsterdam, so when I needed to go to a meeting there, it took me at least 3-4 hours to park the car, to go sit. So how do I make sure that I don't waste my time or waste the time of the other person? Because if you just go meet everybody who wants your time, yeah, you lost it. So I always use these online tools to pre-select people. So before going to event, I'll connect with some participant. We'll meet online via Skype. There was no Zoom at that time. And we'll discuss. And when I come to meet them face to face for the first time, guess what? They already felt they know me. So we don't have the introduction politeness. We dive into the real thing. And if we don't like each other, we don't waste the time together. See, one of the biggest things we have is the lack of attention. And my best-selling book called The Attention Switch is all about giving attention, not getting attention. All what you see in social media and suddenly go, oh my God, look at those people. It's all people trying to grab your attention. Some of them may dare to call themselves influencer. And I'm laughing because you know the reality behind it. I mean, it's all about giving attention. And the introvert among us, this is your time to celebrate. You're the best people, and I'm one of them, by the way, to learn how to give attention. It's not about pitching and speaking and talking about yourself. It's about the other person. And now, you know, attention is the brain muscle. It's being investigated. If you want, I can tell you hours about that. But that's why in English we say we pay attention. It's like money. You're like grabbing the soul of the other person. Now, I'll give you an example of the online event and why online event is a tool, not a strategy, a tool to do it, because it's actually giving attention on steroids. Even what Richard is doing now, that's example of a small event, but it's event. Give each one of us a stage. Each one of us, if we wanted to not get attention from Richard and his team. And each one of us get your attention. Let me ask you a question, and let's see how does it work. You'll understand me very well. If you forget about my voice now, forget what you hear me saying, what else do you hear right now in that moment? Where you are, what do you hear? Maybe the fridge, maybe the birds around, maybe somebody right through the neck, somebody screaming at home, maybe the laundry machine, right? You just pay attention to something else. It was a tricky question. I just shift your attention from listening to my voice to something else. Now you understand what's the power of giving attention, because the moment you give it to your client by giving him a stage, giving an opportunity to shine, you're actually saying, I'm avoiding everything else, and the only thing I care is that. And that's that I come across to the brain of the other person. Now, on an event, it's not duplicate offline event. A lot of people doing event nowadays using it as kind of a branding. I'm not a marketeer. I'm a lawyer. I care about relationship. For me, events is what Richard loved to call is breaking the silos between the marketing, those people winning the event, and people in the front really get to service. Events is a way to get people that you don't see on a regular basis. Events is a way to give a stage, opportunity to give attention to those you want to give attention. Events is a way to build an authority on a global basis. I can take any person who have no experience, putting within 2 weeks on the biggest stage of the world. Guess what? Everybody now knows they are the expert. So events cannot be duplicated in reality. A lot of people are taking words, oh, I cancel this event, let's do an online event. It doesn't work this way. Ask any speaker who speak on stage. They tell you how hard it is to speak in front of the camera, but there's no audience, no energy, than standing on stage. See, some amazing speakers on stages don't dare to speak in front of the camera online because they know they'll be boring and they're going to damage their own reputation. So you cannot duplicate the reality. Events online are not instead of. You need to think about a hybrid way. How we'll do online and offline so we can get a corridor via the online event, get all kind of experience, all kind of measurement, all kind of way to interact with the people you want to interact. When you come to meet them face to face, you know you give attention to the right people. And I think that's what I want you to think about. Don't think about event like a place you just do for, I don't know what, just eating and drinking and whatever, and using one strategy who never works for us as professionals is the hope strategy. Hope strategy is not a strategy, only work in Disneyland. You cannot go to the event and hope maybe somebody remembers me. It's look more than that. It's a system, a way of follow up. So events are just the beginning, the first seeds of relationship. Imagine for this event we're here, how many opportunities you are. All the participants, all the panelists, how many people that can follow up, and even one of them will be an amazing, amazing connection. How many referrals and opportunities? And think how many people you already know in your life that you can give them the stage. You can create events for them. You can bring them somewhere and share knowledge on a global basis. You see, you're literally sitting on the money you don't have business. There's so much business there that you're not even tapping to because you're always thinking, how can I get the new client, the new connection, the new person? You forgot already those you met and you know. And I tell you what's the biggest obstacle, and I stop there. One of the craziest obstacles in our industry is the simplest thing of all. It's just to pick up the phone and ask people on a regular basis, how are you? It sounds so horrible and terrifying to a lot of professionals because we learn to talk in professional way. But if we turn it to become personal, to somebody you don't do any business, a project, it's a client you finished dealing with 2 years ago. Pick up the phone, call them. And how do I know it's something special? Just remember yourself, how many people did call you from February, January this year till now and just ask you the simple question, how are you? You see how unique it is? It's how simple and how unique. And that's where it starts, to build the spark of a relationship. But remember, you'll be examined by the consistency and the authenticity and the follow through, not the first seed you put in the ground. That's my word today.
Thanks, Itzik. It's interesting how systems comes up both in the context of employer brand, but also in terms of being systematic about relationships and engaging with not just your people, but also your clients. Francesca joining us today on holiday from St Andrews in Scotland. Thank you for joining us and your thoughts as always, and then we'll move in from then into the panel session.
Thank you, Richard. Well, they're great talks this morning. I love listening to all of that. Well, let me start with Itzik because I can see why he's such a popular motivational speaker. But two things really stood out for me there. One is that what you deliver face to face and what you deliver over this medium, it is really different. It's actually, I think, you have to work harder to get input and insight when you're doing it this way. And I know, Richard, you've been a master at managing this over the last few months, but it is a very different gift and it does require a different sort of delivering, a different sort of planning. A lot of our firms around the world began by running COVID seminars. It was the easiest thing to run. You'd punt out a seminar about how do you manage in a crisis. And I suspect all of us have been invited to one or two of those. And it very quickly became obvious that that was a bit of a sleeping moment. Most people, after a while, didn't want that. That wasn't what they were looking for. It was that human connection. It was thinking about the value of that webinar. It was working out why you're doing it, for what purpose. And as it's so beautifully said, what are you really looking to follow up on? Is it to create a relationship? Is it to look about how do you follow up with real advice and real help? And thinking that through, is it a step in the chain? Is there somebody you're trying to get from it? Hugely important. And I know most of our firms went from running a lot of webinars to running far fewer, more targeted, and really beginning to think through what is it we're trying to get from it. And going forward, you can see the value of doing a hybrid where you have some face-to-face, you have some webinars that are online, and the different ways that you can engage with people, and taking out that travel element from some of them has been hugely valuable. More people attending, but also making sure you're using their time really carefully and really thoughtfully. And then popping back to the employer brand, that was lovely to listen to, Simon. There's just so much in there, but let me just pick up two tiny elements. I think a lot of people have really seen that during these last 4 months, their transparency, their openness with people has been paid back 100-fold. I bet many of you have been told by your people, I know so much more about the business. I see you more often. I talk with you more often. And that's been hugely impactful. And many people have been using surveys and pulse type surveys to get a temperature check of what's working and what's not. And all the usual rules apply. If you're not following up on those, you're not showing action, and you're not closing that feedback loop, those things become quite annoying to people who are going, I keep getting asked, what are you doing with it? And last but not least, I think in that war for talent, we all know that the really great talent is hard to come by, and vital that we keep developing it, and also that we keep the people who are right to keep in an organisation. I think the point was made very well by a number of people. What you do, what you've done in the last few months, and what you do today will absolutely stick. And if people have seen employers act fairly, responsibly, and honestly, that's what they'll remember. And those that haven't done that, or perhaps have lost their way a little bit, it's a good opportunity to come back and try and re-energize and reinvigorate the relationship with their people, who will be anxious about returning to work, anxious about their role in the future, and anxious about their jobs. So the perfect opportunity to really work on that employer brand. Thank you, Richard. I'll stop there so we can get some questions in as well.
No, that's great. And there's a great question, actually, which in a way is a double question, because as we're aware, unfortunately, we are coming to the end of a period of furloughing. Government can't afford it forever, arguably. And a question really is, how do you balance the need for possibly redundancies or part-time working or whatever it happens to be, with showing that you care for everyone in your organization?
Yeah, Arif asked me a question on that, which I've responded to, and it's really difficult. You have to about protecting the business and doing what's right for the business overall. But I don't think there's any easy solution. It's really difficult. I'm afraid I've got no really clear. I think be honest and open and communicate clearly. That's what I would say. But
Itzik, picking up that point. I mean, I think a lot of what I was hearing from you was that it's not much good to say, "Oh, I'm starting from the wrong place." In other words, if you haven't made the effort through a longish period to be consistent and authentic and keep your people in the loop in a suitable way, don't suddenly pretend that you can do it and then do things that they wouldn't expect you to do, because you will come across as inauthentic, if you like. Do you have any thoughts on that? I mean, are we destined to stay in the past, or can we actually do something about the present?
So the building relationship is never too late, as long as you're very authentic about it. So what I will say to people, you didn't talk to somebody for a while, just pick up the phone and say, you know what? I felt guilty. I didn't talk to you for a while, and now I understand the difficulty and how important it is. So, but the moment you're doing it, you cannot just back again to the routine and never keep in touch again, because then you really destroyed your name. So once you decide to do it, remember, you need to commit yourself on consistency. I mean, 98% of people failing, nothing to do with the coronavirus and the crisis, on the follow-up, always and always will be. We as human beings don't understand how the brain works, but the brain works in the psychology, what they found, the forgotten factor. And think about it yourself when you recommend people to other people. And somebody asks you to recommend. When you do research, recruitment, find who is the right fit, or you just pick up the first person in your mind. That's how we work as human. That's our brain. So if you want to stay top of mind of people, that they remember you every moment they need you, you need to work for it. You need to create value on a constant basis. And that's why I think we as professionals make a mistake. And just one little sentence, 2 points that you can go home and examine yourself. Look at your own website. Check on the top tab. What's written on top there? Our services, our team, which is more trying to get attention, or maybe your team. What can we do for you? Giving attention to your clients. They're looking at that. They're coming to your website, not your employees. Second thing is, look at things like your newsletter. You're already sending it, some of you. What's written inside of it? Is a bunch of stuff about yourself, our services. Look how many partners, new thing. What's the Supreme Court judge? Look how awesome we are. We won awards. It's a bunch of stuff to get attention. Or maybe you investigate about your clients. If all your clients love chocolate, all your newsletter is about chocolate. That's crazy. I know, fast professional to do it, but imagine you do that. I guarantee you, your client will open it every certain time you send a newsletter, and guess who is on top of their mind? You again. And that's the difficulty. You see, it's nothing to do with Corona. And the Corona just put it in the center of the stage. And now people are really exposed because there's no networking. You cannot get more referrals. What do I do? Yeah, if you know how to connect with people, this is fun. This is a fun part. All these tools make it easy to connect people internationally. Things you could never do before. Things you can get people, and the online event I'm creating for the International Bar Association, we get people that, first, the amount of people, we get few 100,000 people to participate. I can never get any auditorium in the world together. And second, the kind of people, the speakers that you get, you would never have dreamt to get them in one room, in one date, flying all over the world, and probably asking fees. And now I get it out of connection, for free, top of the mind, connect everybody to everybody. That's the opportunity you can get. Now, if you see that, that's what the Corona gave us. Everybody now online. Before I was struggling and explaining for 15 years, let's do online. Oh, no, not now. It's not instead of the offline. I'm very offline word. It's the hybrid part that makes it so amazing. And that's connected to what Simon said, employer brand. Your brand will be everywhere, almost hugging your clients and hugging your connections. You know, we call it the bear hug. Bear hug is a very firm, very warm hug, but at the same time, very strong hug that you cannot get rid of, you know, and that's how you give it to them. So that's my answer.
And that's great. And one of the points, again, I've seen that Paul loved the idea of chocolate. I mean, I think one of the challenges is that most firm leaders probably don't know which of their partners like chocolate. And I've seen people saying, oh, you can deal with this area, or you can deal with this area. Not which area are you interested in, partner? Because maybe if we support you in that area, your natural energy and passion and interest in that area will achieve more than any amount of marketing content could. So I think there's very much a piece around get to know your own people before you go out and promote the brand, because if there's dissonance between what you're saying and what your people are delivering, then guess who notices it first? Your clients. Simon, hopefully you can perhaps give some thoughts.
The problem of taking tough action and keeping the relationship. It sounds egotistical to say this, but I had to fire 12 people in one afternoon during the 80s. It was a very tough time, and it's an afternoon I will never forget. And I'm sure everybody here has had to do that from time to time. But what I did was say, look, stick around because tonight we're going to have a meeting, a drink, to say thank you to all 12 of you. Don't just leave. And I did before that a note to everybody in the firm saying why we'd done this. And I saluted each of the 12. And it was a very moving evening. And I just think, although it had to happen, I think that was it was a memory for a great many people that somebody had tried to do it in as decent a way as possible. And I think that applies today. These things have got to happen, and they will happen. But how they will happen will be remembered.
Yeah, there's a great saying, which is not what you do to people, it's how you make them feel that they remember. Francesca, final word from you, and then I think we're going to have to call it a halt for this week.
Yeah, I think there's something very, very powerful about the respectful exit, giving people recognition for what they've done, and understanding that in tough times, tough decisions happen. And I must admit, I think for people who leave, they often leaving to end up to do something that actually ends up better for them in the long run for different opportunities. But very last thought, I think perhaps is about how you can use this current environment for good. I think we saw lots of great examples today about how you can turn what could be a huge challenge into a massive opportunity for clients, and connectivity really stands out for me. How you can connect in an authentic, thoughtful and real way and take this into whatever the new normal proves to be.
Thanks very much. That's great. And again, I'd like to thank all our panel for their great preparation, great insights, the way that they've kind of helped us unwrap some of these challenging issues, which are often happily sort of parceled into silos, but the reality is that we do live in a holistic world, and it's actually quite important that all those different members of the leadership team really bring their unique skills and perspectives to bear. So for those of you who, again, aren't familiar with the way these videos are available, the management library, which all of you have access to, obviously, is available. It has all the videos, about 40 odd now. I think it's quite a large number. And really, just to say, I hope you found today valuable. It's been interesting to bring together people from different perspectives, as always. Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Itzik. Thank you, Francesca. And thank you, Jeremy, for your huge insights. Thank you for Francesca for joining us on holiday. I mean, I thought that was way beyond her pay. Thank you very much for that. And Itzik coming from Holland, and again, Simon, for those great insights, and to meet a real pioneer and somebody who's really changed the world is, I think, an honor. So thank you for that, sir. And Jeremy, for coming in and being your usual wonderful, honest self and saying how it really is, because the truth is that that's the place we all actually live in, whatever we might try and pretend to our clients through our great marketing materials. So please consider supporting our work, and obviously some of you I know joining the forum, which is awesome, and maybe you may hear from Claire about that. And we will be putting up that poll. We're converting the poll into a diagnostic shortly, and I just need to agree the scoring with Simon, so I make sure that it's done properly. And then we'll be able to give you a tool that you can use yourselves internally, and hopefully amongst yourselves score it independently and compare the scores, and then that will give you a feel to the extent to which the partners are in the same track or starting from the same place, starting from a different place. Because believe me, if you all starting from a different place, you're very much unlikely to end up in the same place. That's my view anyway. So on which happy note, I thank you all, and thank you again to Itzik for offering to conclude this session in his big show with all those hundreds of thousands of people. I can't compete with 28,000 Simon to China either, but on the other hand, I think for us group, this is nice that we can have this weekly get together. And next week, as always, Francesca, and then some new guests, and we'll be looking at new ways that we can retune your firm. On which happy note, wish you all a wonderful day, and we'll catch up soon, I'm sure. Bye for now.